So we're once again looking at one of my World War II era cookbooks. I think I've cooked something from this in a previous video, but it's America's Cookbook by the New York Herald Tribune Home Institute. It has some beautiful illustrations and was published in 1944. Like my American Woman's Cookbook from the same time period, it has a wartime supplement after the index. So they're very similar formatting. Today we're doing a white bread. And I will say I was surprised at how much yeast this called for, because from what I can tell, 1 cake of yeast is equivalent to 3 packets of active dry yeast, which active dry yeast is what I use. So it called for 2 cups milk scalded, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 3 tablespoons of shortening, 1 to 2 cakes compressed yeast, 6 cups sifted flour, about. I did not use anywhere near that as far as flour goes. Place milk, salt, sugar, and 2 tablespoons of shortening in a large mixing bowl and cool. When lukewarm, add crumbled yeast cake and 3 cups of flour and beat thoroughly. Gradually stir in remaining flour, add just enough to make a dough that can be handled easily. Turn out on a floured board and knead until smooth and elastic, adding flour as necessary. Place dough in a greased bowl and brush with melted shortening. Cover and let rise in a warm place until doubled in bulk. For 2 to 4 hours. It did not take that long. Knead, shape into loaves, and place in a greased bread pans. Brush with melted shortening, cover, and again let rise in a warm place until doubled in bulk for another 1 to 2 hours. Once again, didn't take that long. Bake in hot oven, 375 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. Then reduced heat to moderate 350 degrees and bake for 40 to 50 minutes longer. Approximate yield 2 loaves. So I have the margarine in the warm milk melting to melt. I also put the salted sugar in there. Sorry, I forgot to turn my camera on when I started doing that. So as I mentioned before, this was a lot of yeast. You can see that, right? 6 3/4 teaspoons of yeast. And then I started to sift the bread flour. The first 3 cups worth I just did directly into the bowl. While the mixer was doing its thing, I sifted the other 3 cups of flour into a separate bowl and started adding a few spoonfuls at a time to try to get the appropriate texture on bread. So of that 6 cups of sifted bread flour, this is what I ended up left. I used a little bit to dust the board before kneading. And then I proceeded to knead the bread. Yes, I'm still using the weird gloves, but at this point I've discovered I like this better when I have my hands into dough, because then I don't get any kind of gross stuff under my fingernails. And then put that into a greased bowl and coated the top with some more with the melted shortening, or margarine in this case, and then I covered it. So I mentioned that it didn't take as much time as they said for this bread to rise, so it kind of exploded from the bowl within about an hour and a half. Yeah, it's very healthy yeast on this in this case. And I opened the lid and punched it down a bit. At this point, I kneaded the bread just a little bit more and divided it into two before starting to mold it into loaf shapes. It didn't say what kind of loaf pan, so I've been enjoying using my Pullman loaf, which is what I put this into. I do like how uniform the bread is shaped by cooking them in this particular bread pan. I probably should have divided the bread dough a little more evenly, as one of them didn't completely fill the space of the pan. But did those not turn out beautiful? And it has a nice crispy texture to the crust and this most beautiful crumb, and so soft. And while I was waiting on bread to rise, I got to enjoy watching Goose try to kick Kiku out of his bed.